Okay, at this point in the management console, it shouldn't matter where you are located, but just in case you're having any errors, just make sure you maybe go to US East, but this part shouldn't really matter. Now, if we go over to EC2, you should see just a lot of zeros here. Now, obviously, I've been doing some testing, but for the most part, this should all be just blanked out. You're going to go into Launch an Instance, and we're going to search in the AWS Marketplace, and we're just going to put it in WordPress. Basically, we're just downloading a basic WordPress installation, then we're going to make some tweaks to it in order to be able to get the most out of it. So at this point, you can just download this WordPress powered by Benami. That's the one we're going to be using. Just hit select. Now let me zoom in a little bit here so that it's easier to see this. But normally the one that I like to work with is the C3 extra large. It gives you access to 4 CPUs, 7.5 gigabytes of memory, but most importantly the SSDs. Now obviously the different ones have different pricing structures, and we're only using these for the time that it takes to do the build, and then we stop the instance, so we're only charged for the time that it's running. But you can try a different one if you like, but if you just want to follow the tutorial exactly as is, we're going to do the C3 extra large. Then we can go to next. We don't need to do anything on this screen at all. It automatically sets this up. We don't need to do anything with it, so we can just after we do all this, we just hit review and launch. It just gives us a few different things saying that it's open to the world. That's good because that's what we need to in order to be able to access it. And then we just hit launch. Now at this point, it's going to ask us to use set up a key pair. I've got a few on there, but we want to create a new one so I can show you what that is. So it's asking to create a new key pair name. You can name it whatever. I'm just going to name this SS AWS so that I know what it's about. And we're going to download this key pair. And you're going to want to make sure you save this to a spot where you're going to remember this. So I'm just going to create a new folder. I'm going to name it EC2. And I'm going to save it in here because we're going to need this later in order to be able to log into our instance through Amazon or through FileZilla to make sure that we edit the php.ini. Once we have it saved, we can just hit launch instances. And it's going to start doing this. Basically just takes a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video while it does that. Okay, at this point, it should be launching. Now while that's doing, I'm going to make sure I have FileZilla. I just downloaded it, but I just wanted to show you. If you do not have FileZilla on your computer, just do a search for FileZilla. And should be this very first result here. You're going to jump over to download FileZilla client, and right away it's going to ask you to download it from here. So just install that, get it set up, make sure that if you go to your files, you can find FileZilla there, the FTP client, because we're going to use that to be able to FTP into our server and change a few things around. So, and actually, let's go ahead and set that up because this is probably still going for a little bit. So let's jump over to FileZilla. We're going to open it up. We're going to go over to Edit, Settings, SFTP, Add Key File. We're going to look for the key file that we just saved. I saved it in my desktop folder, EC2. This PEM file is what we're looking for. Double click on that. It's not a format. It's asking us if we want to convert it to supported format by FileZilla. Yes, we want to do that. It's asking us to give it a file name again. Make sure you name it the same as what the other one was, which in this case, if I open up my desktop here and take a look at EC2, I should see that it's SSAWS2. So that's what I'm going to save it as. If I go over to FileZilla, I can save it as SS AWS2. Don't add a file extension, so we're just going to save that. And we want to make sure that it shows up on there. So that's the thing we need to do for FileZilla in order for it to work with this EC2 setup. At that point, we can just hit OK. And we're going to jump over back to our AWS, go over to EC2 again, jump over to running instances, and in your setup you're only going to see one, but it should have running and it should say 2 out of 2 checks. That just lets me know that it is actually working. We're going to take this public DNS, copy that, and we're going to jump over to FileZilla at that point. We'll type in SFTP :// and then type in that, or paste in the EC2. Now for username, we're going to put in Bitnami. Password, we leave it open. And the port, we set it, or we actually just leave it defaulted, and we'll do a quick connect. We can just hit OK. And it should open up on this folder here. Now let me make this screen a little bigger. Now the first thing we want to do is edit the WP config file, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring it locally, edit it locally, and then be able to upload it again. So just make sure that you are on the left hand side here, you navigate to where you have these EC2 files saved, the key and everything, just so that you can keep everything together. So I'm going to jump over to the desktop and make sure that I'm in my EC2 folder, and then on the live server here, I'm going to go over to make sure that I go over to apps, WordPress, htdocs, and it should show me these different files. Now if I double click on wp-config.php, it's going to start downloading it down here, and it's actually downloading it to this folder here. So I'm going to wait for that to download. We notice that it's right here, where if you have a Windows Explorer window open, it should be right here too. So I'm going to right click on this, and if you have Notepad++, preferably to work with that, but if you just got a regular Notepad, that's fine too. We can do with open with, and ideally you want to use some kind of text editor, or just the Notepad itself. We'll just do Notepad since I know everybody on a Windows computer has that. And well, actually it looks a little funky. Let's do the open with, and we can say WordPad. So here, you know, this has all the WP config different stuff here, but what we're looking for is we want to go below this define WP files, and we're going to paste in some values, which you'll find below the video here. It's just a text file that's going to have those values in there, so that way you can just copy and paste. But it's going to have these two lines here, these two defined. So I'm going to copy them and paste them in over here under WP debug files, and then we can save this file. Then we can close it out. But we did the changes, and now, you know, the changes are live on our, they're on our local computer. So we actually got to drag this file over so that it replaces it. It replaces the current WP config that's in there. And right here it's just connecting to it so I can upload it. It's going to ask you if you want to overwrite it. At that point, just say yes, and the WP config will be correct. Now, in some instances, you might be able to just right click on this one if you want to do it a lot easier and just hit view edit. And you might be able, it might open right up to WordPad, but if that option gives you some issues, then just follow the way I showed you, where you just make sure you drag it over here. Now, the other thing we need to change is the PHP INI file. To find that, we have to go, let's back up a little bit. So if you double click on this folder up here with the 2 dots, it should continue taking us up. So we want to double click it until we can't go anymore. And once we're here, we're going to go down to OPT, double click that one, double click on Bitnami, go down to PHP, double click on that one, double click on etc, and you'll find this php.ini file. Now we're going to do the same thing with this one, where we're just going to drag it over to our local folder here so we can manipulate it and then upload it again. And these are all things that you only have to do this one time. After this is done, you will have to redo this over again. And this is just to make sure you make the correct php.ini changes so that you don't have any issues with it. If we open up our EC2 folder again, where I have all this stuff saved, we'll notice now that we have this php.ini. If we right click it, ideally you want to edit it with Notepad++, but if you don't have that, you can just open with and use WordPad. Now we're gonna, this is the, if you've done the localhost installation, you've seen this before, but you're gonna want to scroll all the way down until you'll see this, until you find the max execution time, or you can just do a search for it, but it's usually right after this miscellaneous. It's under these resource limits, and we're going to increase this numbers 99999. Same thing for max input time. We want to do 99999, and then the memory limit, we want to just max that out, maybe put it around 5,000 or so. We can save this file, save, close it out, and then we can just drag it over into FileZilla, and it's going to ask if we want to overwrite that file, which we definitely do want to overwrite it. Now at that point, you've done the WP config changes and the php.ini changes. Now that all that's left is we need to actually log into this WordPress installation. In order to see what our password is, and we go over, if we look and use this instructions, it usually tells you what to do to get your credentials to go into it. But I'm going to show you right here. You just, as long as your instance is highlighted, you go to Actions, you go to Instance Settings, and get System Log. This is going, you're going to scroll pretty much all the way to the bottom, and then kind of start going up little by little. And right there is going to say your password to this. Now this is unique to everybody, so just make sure you copy this. And this is the only time that you'll be able to see this password, so just make sure you copy it and you save it somewhere safe. Because then if I'm going to just paste it into a text file over here. But if we go and actually take this public DNS, open up a new tab, paste that in there, and we hit the /wp-admin, we'll be able to log in. So the username is always going to be user, and password is going to be that password that I just showed you. Now if you want to change this, you're free to change it as soon as you log in, but you'll need it for at least to be able to log in this first time. If we go over to users, your profile is where you would be able to change that password. So if you want to change that, you want to make sure you do it there. Now if we jump over to plugins, because this was a Bitnami installation, it's got a bunch of different stuff, random things. So you want to select them all, delete just hit apply. You can delete all those files. Now the first time around, because I guess it's trying to delete so many of them, it might give you an error, so just select the rest, delete, until you don't have any plugins. Now you're free to add a SERP shaker. Make sure you add a WP sync, which are all files that I'm going to make sure that are below the video as far as WP sync goes, because that's what you're going to use to migrate the site. And also make sure you set your permalinks as well, because these will just have the generic type permalinks. So you want to use just post name. And don't worry about the warning here. This actually does update correctly, so just use the permalinks there. And now the instance is fully ready to go. You just have to add those different plugins. Now, one thing that I do recommend doing before you do a full build is to go back over to the instance setup area, go to actions, instance state, and have it reboot, because some of those php.ini changes won't take into effect until you reboot. But before you reboot it, make sure you've already got the password. You either updated the password or you've put it somewhere safe, so that you can reboot, add your plugins, and make a full build. And then on this next video, I'll show you how to push that full build live, and so you can just keep on doing this over and over again.